The wind on the outer hull of Latchkey Station did not sound like wind. It sounded like a massive invisible hand trying to sand the metal down to nothing. Gareth Hale adjusted the magnetic grip of his boots and leaned into the gale, his wrench locked onto a bolt that had not moved in 20 years. He was alone. He preferred it that way. Above him, the resonance loom towered like a cathedral made of tuning forks and raw electricity. It was a chaotic architecture of spinning rings and oscillating rods humming with a frequency that vibrated in the marrow of Gareth's bones. The machine was the only thing keeping the local space-time from tearing itself apart, and lately it had been acting like a cranky old man waking up from a nap. "Come on, you piece of junk," Gareth muttered, his voice trapped inside his helmet. "Just turn. 45 degrees. That is all I am asking." The bolt groaned. The metal shrieked. With a sudden crack, it gave way, and Gareth stumbled back, catching himself on a safety rail. He looked up at the loom. The primary ring slowed its rotation, the angry violet light pulsating at its core, dimming to a manageable blue. "See," Gareth panted, checking the oxygen readout on his wrist. It read 80%. "We can get along. It is just a Cold War. Mutually assured destruction." He was lying to himself. He loved the machine in a way. It was the only thing in the hearth belt that was more broken than he was. A proximity alarm blared inside his helmet, sharp and rude, cutting through the static of the wind. Gareth frowned. He was not expecting a supply run for another 3 weeks. He tapped the display on his forearm. Unidentified vessel. Class freighter, condition critical. "Great," Gareth sighed. "Just what I need. Tourists with engine trouble." He looked toward the landing pad, a slab of gray duracrete jutting out into the snow-white void of the nebula's edge. A ship was descending. It was an ugly thing, a patchwork quilt of welded hull plates and mismatched thrusters, leaking black smoke that froze instantly in the vacuum. It looked less like a spaceship and more like a collection of spare parts flying in formation by sheer force of will. It hit the deck hard. The vibration traveled through the station's struts and up Gareth's legs. "Hey!" Gareth shouted into the open comms channel, though he knew they probably could not hear him. "This is a restricted government facility. You cannot just park that heap here," static answered him. Then a voice that sounded like gravel in a blender. "Delivery for Hale. Payment cleared. No returns." The thrusters of the freighter cut out. The silence that followed was heavy. Gareth unclipped his safety line and stomped toward the airlock. He did not order a delivery, and he certainly did not pay for one. By the time Gareth cycled through the airlock and reached the internal hangar bay, the freighter's cargo ramp was already lowering. The hydraulics screamed in protest. Steam hissed and curled around the landing gear. Gareth stood with his arms crossed, his wrench still in his hand, not as a weapon exactly, but he found people were more polite when he held a heavy piece of titanium. He expected crates. He expected contraband fuel. He expected a smuggler trying to offload stolen tech. He did not expect children. The ramp hit the deck with a clang. Through the haze of venting coolant, figures emerged. First came the smell ozone old engine grease and something sharply organic like pine needles and rain. Then came the silhouettes. They were Vulpiri. Even in the dim lights of the hangar, the characteristics were unmistakable. The triangular mobile ears atop their heads, the slight sheen of fur on their forearms, and the tails that twitched nervously behind them. 2 women walked in front. One was tall, moving with a stiff, regal grace that suggested she was holding herself together with invisible wire. That was Arden. Her coat was threadbare, but she wore it like a royal cloak. Beside her was another woman, shorter eyes darting everywhere, her hand resting near her hip, as if reaching for a weapon she did not have. That was Mira, and behind them a swarm. Gareth blinked. He actually counted out loud, his brain refusing to process the visual data. 1, 2, 3, 4, 9 of them. 9 children ranging from toddlers, clinging to pant legs, to a teenager who looked ready to punch the world in the throat. They were shivering. Their clothes were thin tunics and patched trousers completely unsuited for the sub-zero draft of the hangar. A man in a grease-stained flight suit appeared at the top of the ramp. Captain Rook-Saren. He looked like a man who had not slept in a week and did not plan to start now. He kicked a single, pathetic crate down the ramp. It skidded across the floor and stopped at Gareth's feet. "What is this?" Gareth demanded, his voice echoing in the cavernous bay. "Supplies," Rook said, not meeting Gareth's eyes. He hit the button to retract the ramp immediately. "Dried rations, water filters. It is all I had room for." "I did not ask about the box." Gareth stepped forward, raising the wrench. "I am talking about the platoon you just dumped on my floor. Who are these people?" "Passengers," Rook shouted over the rising whine of his engines. "The ticket was one way. Look, Hale, they paid to get to the edge of the belt. This is the edge." "This is a maintenance station." "It is not a hotel," Gareth yelled. "Take them back." Rook paused. For a second, just 1 second, the captain looked down at the shivering group of Vulpiri, and his face twisted with something that looked like shame. But shame was heavy, and Rook-Saren was a man who liked to travel light. "They paid to get here," Rook repeated, his voice harder. "I am paying my debt of conscience by not tossing them out the airlock halfway. Good luck, Hale." The ramp sealed shut. The thrusters fired, blasting a wave of heat into the bay that made the children flinch. Gareth had to shield his eyes as the freighter lifted off, lurching drunkenly into the sky before punching its drive and vanishing into the nebula. Silence rushed back into the hangar, louder than the noise had been. Gareth stood there, the wrench dangling from his hand. He turned slowly to face the group. They looked at him, 11 pairs of eyes. Some were amber, some were green, all of them wide with a mixture of fear and exhaustion. The smallest child, a boy with fur the color of burnt caramel, hid his face in Mira's coat. The teenager, the girl who had been standing at the back, stepped forward. She moved in front of the younger ones, her posture wide, her chin lifted. This was Nyla. She could not have been more than 16, but her eyes looked older than Gareth's. She looked at the retreating dot of the ship, then at Gareth, then at the desolate metal walls surrounding them. She let out a long, shaky breath that misted in the cold air. "No one wanted 2 fox moms with 9 kids, Nyla said. Her voice was flat, devoid of self-pity, stating a fact as immutable as gravity. The sentence hung in the air. It was a brutal summary of their existence, rejected, unwanted, cargo that did not fit in the hold. Gareth looked at them. He saw the way Arden was shivering but refusing to hug herself for warmth, because that would show weakness. He saw the way Mira was scanning the exits, calculating odds. He saw the way the children were looking at him, not as a savior, but as the next bad thing that was about to happen to them. He thought about his quiet station. He thought about his ration packs organized by color. He thought about the silence he had curated for 5 years to drown out the sounds of the war in his head. If he turned them away, they would die. The next transport was weeks away. The exposure would kill them in hours if they stayed in the hangar. He looked at Nyla. She was waiting for him to yell. She was waiting for the rejection so she could start fighting. Gareth felt a strange sensation in his chest. It was the crack of a bolt finally giving way. "I do," Gareth said. The words came out rough, like gravel scraping on steel. He surprised himself. He surprised Nyla, who blinked, her fierce expression faltering for a microsecond. "What?" she asked. "I do," Gareth repeated louder this time. He gestured with the wrench, encompassing the whole shivering, terrified mess of them. "All of you, come with me." He turned his back on them before he could talk himself out of it. It was a suicide note for his peace of mind. He knew it. He had just signed away his solitude, his routine, and probably his sanity. "Wait!" The voice was cool and melodic. Arden stepped forward. She placed a hand on Nyla's shoulder, gently moving the girl aside. She faced Gareth's back. "We are not beggars, Mr. Hale," Arden said. Her tail was still her ears pitched forward. "We do not take charity. If we stay, we earn our keep. We work." Gareth stopped. He looked over his shoulder. He saw the pride in her spine. It was a structural integrity he recognized. It was the only thing keeping her standing. "Fine," Gareth grunted. "You can start by not freezing to death. Follow me." He led them out of the hangar and into the main corridor of Latchkey Station. The transition was jarring. The hangar was industrial and gray, but the station interior was, well, it was also industrial and gray, but it was warmer. The lights flickered overhead, buzzing with the rhythm of the loom outside. The floor was mesh grating, revealing pipes and cables running like arteries underneath. Gareth walked fast, his heavy boots clanking. The sound of 22 other feet, some booted, some wrapped in rags, pattered behind him. It sounded like rain. "This is the main spine," Gareth pointed without looking back. "Engineering is down. Quarters are up. Do not touch the red panels. Do not touch the yellow panels. Actually, do not touch any panels. Is everything in this place made of sadness and rivets?" a voice piped up. Gareth glanced back. It was Mira. She was carrying a toddler on one hip and dragging a duffel bag with the other hand. She offered him a sharp, tired smile. "Mostly rivets," Gareth said. "The sadness is structural filler." "Charming," Mira deadpanned. "I feel right at home." They reached the mess hall. Gareth hit the door release, and the panel slid open with a hiss. The room was enormous. It had been built to feed a crew of 50 back when Latchkey was a prime research facility. Now, it was a ghost town of stainless steel tables and stacked chairs. The silence here was thick, accumulated over years of solitary meals. "Kitchen is there," Gareth pointed to the serving counter. "Synthesizer is old, but it prints edible protein blocks. Most of the time. Sometimes it prints warm plastic. You learn to tell the difference by the smell." Arden walked into the room, her eyes scanning the ceiling, the vents, the corners. She was checking for threats, Gareth realized. She was checking for cameras. "It is big," Arden said softly. "It is empty," Gareth corrected. "Whatever you need, find it. If it is locked for a reason. Do not pry." One of the younger children, a boy of maybe 6 with oversized ears and a missing front tooth, wandered over to the large viewport that dominated the far wall. The blast shutters were open. Outside, the resonance loom was visible in all its terrifying glory. The machine was huge, a construct of spinning rings, the size of a city block floating in the void. Arcs of resonance energy like blue lightning jumped between the pylons. It pulsed with a heartbeat that you could feel in your teeth. The boy pressed his nose against the thick glass. "Hey, mister," the boy called out. Gareth sighed. "Gareth, just Gareth." "Is it a beast?" the boy asked, staring at the loom. "Or is it just a big angry rock?" Gareth walked over to the window. He stood next to the boy. The reflection in the glass showed a scarred, bearded man next to a small, wide-eyed child. "Both," Gareth said. "It is a machine that thinks it is a god, and it is in a bad mood." "Does it like you?" the boy asked. "No," Gareth said. "It hates me. Specifically and personally." The boy giggled. It was a light, tinkling sound that seemed to shatter against the heavy metal walls. Gareth flinched slightly. He had not heard a child laugh in he could not remember how long. "Right." Gareth turned back to the group. "There are 4 bunk rooms down the hall. They have not been used in a decade. They will be dusty. The water pressure is low. The heating is efficient but dry. Get settled. I have work to do." He started to walk away, needing to escape the sudden density of life in his space. He needed to be alone. He needed to process the fact that he had just adopted a refugee camp. "Mr. Hale?" He stopped. It was Neela again. She was holding a large, oddly shaped bag. She had not put it down since they arrived. "Thank you," she said. She did not smile. She looked at him with a scrutiny that made him uncomfortable. She was assessing him, looking for the catch. "Do not thank me yet," Gareth muttered. "You have not tried the coffee." He walked out the door, sliding shut behind him. 2 hours later, Gareth was back in the command center, staring at the monitors. The station's internal sensors were lighting up like a festive tree. Heat signatures in the mess hall, water usage spiking in the dorms, carbon dioxide levels rising slightly in Sector 2. It was overwhelming. The station felt feverish. He zoomed in on the camera feed for the mess hall. They were moving tables. Arden was directing the operation with hand signals. Mira was dismantling the synthesizer's front panel with a butter knife. "She is going to void the warranty," Gareth mumbled. But he did not activate the intercom to stop her. His eyes drifted to the pile of luggage they had stacked in the corner. It was a sad collection, mismatched bags tied with rope. But there was one object that caught his eye. It sat on top of a pile of coats. It looked like an egg made of cloudy glass, roughly the size of a melon. Even through the grainy camera feed, it seemed to catch the light in a strange way. Gareth frowned. He glanced at the seismic readout for the loom. Every time the camera focused on the glass egg, the loom's resonance frequency ticked up by 0.01%. It was tiny. A coincidence. It had to be. But then on the screen, the child, the one who asked if the loom was a beast, ran past the luggage pile. He bumped the table. The glass egg wobbled. On Gareth's main console, the loom let out a sympathetic spike, a perfect mirror of the movement. "What in the hells?" Gareth whispered. He tapped a sequence into his keyboard, bringing up a spectral analysis of the mess hall. He focused the sensors on the egg. It was vibrating. It was humming. It was emitting a low-frequency pulse that was mathematically identical to the carrier wave of the resonance loom. It was as if the object and the machine were singing the same song, just in different octaves. "They brought a piece of the loom with them," Gareth wondered aloud. "No, that is impossible. The loom is unique." He watched the screen. Mira had the synthesizer working. She produced a tray of steaming brown cubes. The children cheered. It was a small, pathetic victory. But it was a victory. Gareth leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. Who were these people Captain Rook said they paid to get here? Why here? Why Latchkey? It was the end of the line. The only thing past this point was the unstable soup of the outer nebula. Night cycles on Latchkey were artificial. The main lights dimmed to a dull amber to simulate sunset. Gareth could not sleep. He prowled the corridors, checking seals, checking pressure gauges, checking things that did not need checking. His boots were silent on the grating, a trick he had learned in the war and never unlearned. He found himself outside the mess hall again. The door was cracked open an inch. He could hear voices. He knew he should walk away. He was a man who valued privacy, but he was also a station commander with 10 unidentified strangers on his ship. Paranoia 1. He stopped and listened. "He does not know," Mira's voice, low, urgent. "He suspects," in Arden's voice, calm, measured. "He is not a fool, Mira. Did you see his hands, the scarring pattern on his knuckles? He is a veteran. He sees more than he says." "We cannot stay here, Arden," Mira said. "If the Dominion tracks the ship—" "The ship is gone," Arden replied. "And Rook will not talk. He is a coward, but he is a greedy one. He will not risk his reputation." "Director Kincaid does not need Rook to talk," Mira hissed. "She has hounds. She has the Bloom hunters. If they find us here, if they find it—" "They will not," Arden said firmly. "We are invisible here. This is a dead station on a dead rock. We buy time. We fix the clothes. We let the children rest. And then we figure out the next step." "Nyla is scared," Mira said, her voice softening. "She is trying to be tough, but she is terrified." "We are all terrified, sister," Arden said. "But we are free. For tonight, we are free." Gareth stepped back into the shadows. His heart was hammering a slow, heavy rhythm against his ribs. Dominion, Director Kincaid. These were not just names. They were death sentences. The Harmonist Dominion ran the intersectors with a philosophy of aggressive tranquility. Furki. If you fit the mold, you were safe. If you stood out, if you were a variant, a discordant element, you disappeared. And these women were running from Sable Kincaid herself. Gareth retreated to the airlock where the children had left their outer coats to dry. The garments were hanging on the piping, dripping melted frost onto the floor. He needed to know. He needed to be sure. He moved to the smallest coat, a patched blue parka, that looked like it had been third-hand when it was new. He pulled a scanner from his belt. It was a military-grade sweeper, something he had kept from his service days. Illegal for a civilian to own. Useful for a man who wanted to stay hidden. He swept the wand over the fabric. Nothing. He moved to the next one. Nyla's coat. Nothing. He moved to the pile of boots. He scanned the soles. He scanned the linings. Nothing. Gareth let out a breath. Maybe he was being paranoid. Maybe they were just refugees running from debt or a bad marriage. He turned to leave. Then his eye caught something on the collar of one of the smallest tunics. It was a decorative button. A little metal star. It looked cute. It looked innocent. He ran the scanner over it. The device screamed a high-pitched whine that Gareth smothered instantly with his hand. He stared at the readout. It was not a decorative button. It was a dormant transponder. A sleeper hook. It did not broadcast a signal constantly. That would be too easy to find. It simply recorded the location coordinates and waited for a wake-up ping from a master satellite. Someone had sewn it onto the child's collar. Someone knew exactly where they were going, or at least wanted to know where they ended up. Gareth stared at the tiny metal star. It felt heavy in his hand, heavier than the wrench, heavier than the station. They were not just refugees. They were bait. And someone had just cast a line into his quiet, frozen waters. Gareth looked down the hallway toward the sleeping quarters. He could hear the faint sound of Mira snoring, a comical snorting sound that somehow made the situation worse. "I do," he whispered to himself, repeating the words he had said in the hangar. "I do. All of you. Come with me." He closed his hand over the tracker. He could crush it. He could throw it out the airlock. But if he destroyed it, the sender would know the signal was lost. If he left it, they would eventually come. He was trapped. They were all trapped. Gareth Hale walked back to the control room, the tracker burning a hole in his pocket. He sat down in the command chair and looked at the resonance loom. The machine pulsed. A slow, violet wink. "You knew, didn't you?" Gareth asked the machine. The loom said nothing. It just hummed a low vibration that sounded suspiciously like a chuckle. Outside, the snow light of the nebula drifted past, cold and indifferent. Gareth pulled up the station's defense grid protocols. They had not been activated in 15 years. The software was outdated. The turrets were probably frozen solid. He began to type. If trouble was coming to Latchkey Station, he was going to make sure the front door was locked. The reality of having 11 people living in a station built for one did not arrive with a bang. It arrived with the plumbing. 48 hours after the arrival of the freighter, Latchkey Station was groaning. The environmental systems accustomed to scrubbing the carbon dioxide of a single, slow-breathing man were now hyperventilating. The water recycler hummed with a frantic, high-pitched whine that sounded dangerously like a tea kettle about to explode. And the heat, or rather the lack of it, became the primary topic of conversation. Gareth stood in the center of the mess hall. He looked like a man who had lost a war against entropy. "Listen to me," Gareth said, his voice struggling to rise above the ambient noise of 9 children eating breakfast. "We need rules. Rule number 1. Do not touch the red buttons. Rule number 2. Do not touch the yellow buttons. Rule number 3. If a pipe is hissing, do not put your face near it to see why. A small hand went up. It belonged to the boy with the caramel fur, whose name Gareth had learned was Tibbs. "What about the blue buttons?" Tibbs asked a spoon, dripping green algae porridge onto the table. "There are no blue buttons on this station," Gareth said. "I saw one," Tibbs insisted, "in the room with the big sleeping tubes." Gareth felt a vein in his temple pulse. "That is the airlock override. Definitely do not touch the blue button, is that clear?" The children nodded in a disjointed wave of affirmative motions. They looked innocent. Gareth knew better. They were bored, they were energetic, and they were trapped in a metal can orbiting a star that wanted to kill them. It was a recipe for disaster. Arden stood by the synthesizer, scraping the last of the protein paste into a bowl. She looked exhausted. Her ears were drooped slightly to the sides, a sign of fatigue among the Vulpiri. But her back was straight. She walked over to the table and placed the bowl down in front of Nyla. "Eat," Arden said softly. "I am not hungry," Nyla muttered, staring at the gray sludge. She was sitting with her back to the wall, eyes fixed on Gareth. She watched him like he was a predator pacing the perimeter. "You are hungry," Arden corrected her. "You are just stubborn. Eat." Mira, who was currently juggling 3 empty ration cups to entertain the toddlers, missed a catch. A cup clattered to the floor. "Smooth," Gareth said. "It is part of the act," Mira retorted, scooping the cup up with her tail. "It teaches them that failure is inevitable. Very educational." Gareth grunted. He picked up his datapad. "I am going to check the atmospheric scrubbers in Sector 4. Stay here. Do not wander. If the lights flash red, put on the masks I showed you. If the lights go out completely well, sit tight and hope I fix it." He turned to leave, but stopped when he felt the floor vibrate. It was not the usual mechanical hum of the station. It was a deeper resonance, a thrumming that traveled up through the soles of his boots and rattled his teeth. On the main viewport, the resonance loom flared. The violet light at its core expanded, pulsing outward in a wave that washed over the station's shields. "It is doing it again," Nyla said, her voice tight. Gareth looked at the machine. The loom had been erratic since they arrived. The oscillation variance was up by 12%. It was as if the machine knew they were there. It was reacting to the sudden increase in biological mass, or perhaps it was reacting to the glass object wrapped in a towel in the corner of the room. "It is just adjusting to the thermal load," Gareth lied. He was good at lying about technical things. "Nothing to worry about." He walked out of the mess hall, but he could feel Nyla's eyes boring into his back until the door hissed shut. The station was a playground of lethal hazards, and the children found every single one of them. By the 3rd day, a game had emerged. Gareth did not know the name of the game, but the rules seemed to involve locating the most critical tools he owned and hiding them. He was under the floor, grating in Corridor B, trying to weld a support strut that had come loose from the vibration. He reached out his hand without looking. "Wrench," he muttered to the empty air. Nothing happened. "Wrench," he repeated louder. Still nothing. Gareth pushed his welding goggles up and looked around. The torque wrench, a heavy piece of solid titanium that he had placed exactly 6 inches to his right, was gone. He sighed a long, ragged sound. He climbed out of the maintenance pit and dusted off his knees. "All right," he shouted down the hall. "Who has it?" A giggle echoed from the junction leading to the hydroponics bay. Gareth marched toward the sound. He turned the corner and found 3 of them, Tibbs, a girl named Ilara, and a toddler, whose name Gareth was fairly sure was just Pip, crouched behind a ventilation duct. Tibbs was holding the wrench high above his head like a sword. "I am the king of iron," Tibbs proclaimed. "You are the king of getting vented out an airlock," Gareth growled, reaching for the tool. Tibbs scrambled back his tail, fluffing up in mock terror. "The beast approaches, defend the castle!" Ilara threw a handful of insulation foam at Gareth. It bounced harmlessly off his chest. "Give me the wrench," Gareth said, trying to summon his command voice. It was the voice that had once ordered squadrons into orbital drops. It had absolutely no effect on a 7-year-old Volpiri. "Trade," Tibbs negotiated, lowering the wrench slightly. "I am not trading for my own property," Gareth said. "We want to see the top," Tibbs said, pointing to the ceiling ladder that led to the observation dome. "The big window. You locked it." "I locked it because the radiation shielding is thin up there," Gareth said, "and because you are small and the drop is 20 meters. "We will be careful," Ilara promised. Gareth looked at them. They were dirty, their clothes were stained with grease from the floor, and they looked happier than they had any right to be. He snatched the wrench from Tibbs's hand. "No," Gareth said. The kids slumped. The King of Iron game was over. They looked so dejected that Gareth felt a sharp pang of guilt in his gut. He hated that feeling. He preferred anger. Anger was cleaner. "However," Gareth said, pausing, "there is a secondary viewport in the cargo loading bay. It is safe, but you cannot see out of it because it is too high." The ears of all 3 children perked up simultaneously. "If," Gareth pointed the wrench at them, "and only if you return every single tool you have stolen in the last 24 hours, I might install a platform there. Maybe." Tibbs's eyes went wide. "Deal!" He whistled a sharp sound. From the shadows of the corridor, 2 other children emerged carrying a pile of screwdrivers, a laser cutter, and Gareth's missing left boot. Gareth stared at the pile. "You took my boot. I was looking for that." "It was a tank for the army," Ilara explained. Gareth shook his head. He took his boot back. "Fine. Go to the loading bay. Do not touch anything." As they scampered off, Gareth stayed behind. He looked at the smooth metal wall of the corridor. It was designed for adults. The handrails were set at chest height for a grown man. For a child, the corridor was a slick, dangerous tunnel. Gareth looked at his welding torch. He looked at the pile of scrap metal in the corner. He spent the next 3 hours not fixing the support strut. Instead, he welded a second row of handrails along the main arterial corridor, exactly 30 inches from the floor. He told himself it was for safety. If the gravity failed, he did not want loose projectiles bouncing around. That was the lie. The truth was he had seen Pip trying to reach the high rail and falling over, and the memory of it bothered him. When he finished, he stood back to inspect his work. The rails were rough, but solid. "You are going soft, Hale," a voice said. Gareth turned. Nyla was leaning against the bulkhead. Her arms were crossed. She was looking at the low handrails with an expression he could not quite read. It was not hostility, but it was not gratitude either. It was confusion. "It is a liability issue," Gareth said gruffly. "If one of them cracks their head open, I have to waste medical supplies." "Right," Nyla said. "Liability." She pushed off the wall and walked past him. Her hand trailed along the new rail, her fingers brushing the warm metal. She did not say thank you. She did not have to. In the galley, the war was logistical. Arden sat at the table surrounded by data pads. She was frowning at a spreadsheet. The station's food stores were depleting faster than Gareth's initial calculations, mostly because Gareth's calculations had assumed standard rationing, not the metabolism of growing Volpiri children who burned calories like furnaces. "We need to cut the evening portion by 15%, Arden said, not looking up as Gareth entered. "They are already complaining about the taste," Gareth said, pouring himself a cup of black coffee that smelled like burnt rubber. "If you cut the size, you will have a mutiny." "Better a mutiny than starvation in 3 weeks, Arden said. She tapped the screen. "I have managed to recalibrate the water cycler. We are recovering 98% of moisture now, up from 85. That gives us a surplus. If we can increase the humidity in the hydroponics bay, we might be able to accelerate the algae bloom. Gareth looked at her. She was wearing a mechanic's jumpsuit he had lent her. It was 3 sizes too big, rolled up at the sleeves and cuffs. She looked ridiculous, and yet she commanded the room. "You know hydraulic systems?" Gareth asked. "I managed a textile plant in the mid-rim," Arden said. "Machines are machines. Inputs, outputs, pressure points. It is all the same logic." She rubbed her forehead. Her hand shook slightly. Gareth noticed the tremor. She was running on adrenaline and caffeine. "You need sleep," Gareth said. "I need to make sure my children have water," Arden replied. "They are sleeping," Gareth said. "Mira is watching them. Go lie down. That is an order from the station commander." Arden looked up at him. Her amber eyes were clouded with fatigue, but the steel behind them was untouched. "We are not your crew, Mr. Hale. You do not give us orders." "Then take it as a suggestion from a landlord," Gareth said. Arden held his gaze for a long moment. Then slowly, she nodded. 2 hours. If the pressure alarm sounds, wake me." "If the pressure alarm sounds, you will hear it," Gareth said. She stood up, swaying slightly. She placed a hand on the table to steady herself. "Thank you for the rails, Gareth." Gareth stiffened. "Liability." "Of course," Arden said. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. She walked toward the bunk rooms. Gareth watched her go. He turned to the synthesizer. He needed to figure out how to make algae taste like something other than wet cardboard. "You are terrible at being a grump, you know." Mira popped up from behind the counter. Gareth actually jumped, spilling hot coffee on his hand. He swore. "Do you people have bells?" Gareth snapped. "Or do you just manifest out of thin air?" "We are stealthy," Mira grinned. She was cutting a piece of fabric with a pair of shears. "It is a survival trait." "And seriously, the grumpy old man act, it has holes. I can see the light shining through." "I am not acting." Gareth wiped his hand. "This station is a delicate ecosystem. You are an invasive species." "We are hardy perennials," Mira corrected. "We bloom where we are planted." She gestured around the room. "Look at this place. It is a tomb, Gareth. A pile of metal orbiting a dying star. But it has a roof. A roof over our heads is better than conditional kindness. We have had enough of 'we will help you if you change' or 'we will help you if you hide.' You just let us in. You yelled, but you let us in." "I needed the silence broken," Gareth said. "I did not expect a demolition crew." "You love it," Mira winked. "Admit it. You were lonely." "I was peaceful." "Peace is just death with a pulse," Mira said, her voice suddenly dropping the joking tone. She looked at the shears in her hand. "We know what peace looks like in the Dominion. It is quiet, it is orderly, and it is empty. It is—" She looked up at him. "We prefer the noise, even if the algae tastes like feet," Gareth snorted. It was a genuine laugh, rusty and surprised. "It does taste like feet. I think the flavor synthesizer is stuck on boot." The incident happened 2 days later. It was the middle of the night cycle. Most of the station was asleep. Gareth was in the command center, monitoring the loom. The glass egg, which Nyla refused to let out of her sight, was currently in the bunk room, but the loom was still singing to it. The graphs showed a harmonic convergence that shouldn't be mathematically possible. Gareth was dozing in his chair when a metallic crash echoed from the main corridor. He was awake instantly. His body moved before his mind caught up. He rolled off the chair, grabbed the stun baton he kept under the console, and flattened himself against the wall. Clang. Another sound. Metal on metal. Gareth's breathing shallowed. His heart rate dropped. The world narrowed to a tunnel of threat assessment. He was not on Latchkey Station anymore. He was back in the trenches of the Orion skirmishes. The enemy was boarding. They were in the wire. He swung around the door frame, the baton raised, ready to strike. A figure stood in the shadows, small, holding a tray. Gareth roared, lunging forward, the baton humming with 50,000 volts. The figure gasped and dropped the tray. "Don't!" The scream pierced the fog in Gareth's brain. He froze. The baton was inches from Arden's face. She was standing there, pressed against the bulkhead. A mug of steaming liquid had shattered on the floor. Her eyes were wide pupils dilated to black discs. Her ears were flattened tight against her skull. But she did not run. She stood her ground. Gareth blinked. The trench vanished. The enemy vanished. He was standing in his socks, holding a weapon, at a mother who was bringing him tea. He lowered the baton slowly. His hand was shaking so hard, the weapon rattled. "Hi," Gareth croaked. He deactivated the baton and tossed it onto the console desk. It clattered loudly. "I am sorry, I thought—" He backed away, revulsion washing over him. He pressed his hands over his face. "I am sorry," Arden let out a breath. She looked down at the shattered mug. Then she looked at him. She did not ask, "What happened?" She did not ask, "Are you crazy?" She saw the sweat on his forehead. She saw the way his eyes were darting to the corners of the room. She knew what a soldier looked like when the war came back. "It was just a tray," Arden said quietly. Her voice was steady. "I tripped on a loose grate." "I could have killed you," Gareth whispered. "But you did not," Arden said. She knelt down and began to pick up the shards of ceramic. "Do not help," she said when Gareth moved. "You will cut yourself. Your hands are shaking." It was not an accusation. It was a statement of fact. "Go sit down, Gareth," she said. Gareth slumped into the command chair. He watched her clean up the mess. She moved efficiently, gathering the pieces, wiping the spill with a rag she pulled from her pocket. When she was done, she stood up. She did not leave. She walked over to the small auxiliary heater in the corner, poured a cup of hot water, and placed a packet of dried herbal mix into it. She waited for it to steep. She walked over to him and placed the cup in his hand. "Drink," she said. Gareth took it. The warmth seeped into his cold fingers. "Why are you here?" Gareth asked, his voice hollow. "Why didn't you run?" "Because running triggers the predator," Arden said simply. "And because you are not a predator. You are just a wounded guard dog." She placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. It was a fleeting touch, barely there, but it grounded him. "We all have ghosts, Gareth," she said. "Mine just look different than yours. Drink your tea." She turned and left the room. Gareth sat there in the dark, holding the cup, watching the steam rise against the violet light of the loom. By the end of the week, the dynamic had shifted. The fear had receded, replaced by a cautious rhythm. The children became the station's immune system. They swarmed over the lower decks, armed with rags and cleaning spray. They polished the oxidized copper pipes until they gleamed. They sorted the chaotic bins of screws and bolts by size, thread count, and shininess. Gareth found himself teaching a class on atmospheric pressure to an audience of 4. "So," Gareth pointed to the whiteboard, "if the pressure drops below 10 kilopascals, what happens to your eyes?" "They pop out," Tibbs shouted enthusiastically. "No," Gareth sighed. "They do not pop out, but you pass out and then you die. Which is why we check the seals." "Who wants to check the seals on deck 3? 4 hands shot up. It was domestic. It was mundane. It was working. Then the loom decided to remind them who was really in charge. It happened during the midday meal. The station gave a lurch, violent and sudden, like a ship hitting a reef. Plates slid off the table. "Hold on!" Gareth shouted, grabbing the edge of the table. The gravity generators whined. Then, with a sickening drop, the gravity in the main corridor inverted. "Corridor C," Gareth yelled, looking at his wrist display. "Structural failure in the grav plating." He ran. He did not think. He ran. Arden and Mira were right behind him. Corridor C was the long spine connecting the living quarters to the engineering bay. It was also where the children played zero-G tag when Gareth wasn't looking. They burst into the corridor. The world was wrong. Up was down. Floating in the center of the hallway were debris dust and one child, Pip. The toddler was tumbling slowly through the air, crying silently, tears floating off his face in little globules. But the danger wasn't the floating. The danger was the intake vent at the far end of the hall. The loom's magnetic surge had reversed the fan flow. It was now sucking air with the force of a hurricane. Pip was drifting toward the spinning blades. "Pip!" Mira screamed. She launched herself off the doorframe, diving into the zero-G. But she miscalculated the angle. She hit the wall hard and spun away. "The suction is too strong," Gareth shouted. "Grab my belt." He looked at Arden. She understood instantly. She grabbed Gareth's utility belt. Mira recovered and grabbed Arden's waist. Nyla, who had appeared from nowhere, grabbed Mira's legs and wrapped her own legs around a stanchion, a human Vulpiri chain. "Ready!" Gareth yelled. "Go!" Arden shouted. Gareth kicked off the bulkhead. He flew through the air, the suction of the fan dragging him faster. The blades were a blur of steel churning the air. Pip was 5 feet away from them. 3 feet. Gareth reached out. The cold air burned his skin. The fan roared like a jet engine. He caught Pip's ankle. The momentum jerked him forward. His hand slammed into the fan's safety grate. The metal sliced through his glove and bit into his palm. "Pull!" Gareth screamed. Arden gritted her teeth, her boots slipping on the wall. "Pull," she commanded the line. Mira heaved. Nyla screamed with effort. The chain tightened. Slowly, agonizingly, they dragged Gareth and the child back against the airflow. Inch by inch. They collapsed onto the deck plates, just as the gravity systems rebooted. Thump. They hit the floor in a heap of limbs and heavy breathing. Pip wailed a loud, healthy sound. Gareth lay on his back, clutching his bleeding hand. The pain was sharp and bright. He looked up. Arden was checking Pip. Mira was checking Arden. Nyla was checking everyone. Gareth started to laugh. It was a hysterical, breathless laugh. "We are alive," Gareth wheezed. "We are all alive." Arden looked at him. She was pale, her fur matted with sweat. She crawled over to him and took his injured hand. She examined the cut with clinical precision. "You need stitches," she said. "I have a kit," Gareth said. "I know where it is," Arden said. "I organized your medical bay yesterday." She looked into his eyes. The barrier was gone. The distance was gone. They had bled together. They had held the line. "You did not let go," Arden said softly. "He is heavy," Gareth joked weakly. "Gareth," Arden said, her voice firm. "Family is the people who stay when the station shakes." Gareth looked at the ceiling. He looked at the group of mismatched refugees who had just saved him as much as he had saved them. "Yeah," Gareth said. "I guess they are." For the first time in 5 years, Gareth Hale did not feel like a man serving a sentence. He felt like a man holding a post. The peace lasted exactly 4 hours. They were in the command center, bandaging Gareth's hand. The mood was light. Adrenaline was fading into exhaustion. Then, the main communications console lit up. It was not a static burst. It was a Priority 1 override. The Dominion seal, a perfect golden circle inside a triangle, rotated on the screen. The room went deadly silent. Nyla stepped in front of the younger children. Mira went still. The image resolved. Director Sable Kincaid sat at a desk that looked like it was carved from black ice. She was a woman of sharp angles, sharp cheekbones, sharp eyes, and a uniform so crisp it looked like it could cut skin. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun. She looked directly at the camera. She did not look at Gareth. She looked through him. "This is a transmission for Latchkey Station." Kincaid's voice was smooth, cultured, and terrifyingly calm. "We have tracked a resonance anomaly to your coordinates." She paused, consulting a datapad. "Gareth Hale, veteran. Service number 774 Alpha. You are harboring a non-standard residence group. Fugitives of the Harmonious Dominion. Nee. Gareth stepped forward, shielding Arden from the camera's view. I have no idea what you are talking about, Director. I am alone here. Kincaid smiled. It was not a nice smile. Do not insult my intelligence, Mr. Hale. We picked up the thermal signatures. We picked up the transponder ping before you suppressed it. She leaned forward. We are not just looking for the Vulpiri, Mr. Hale. We are looking for the artifact they stole. The resonance key. Or as they likely call it, the glass egg. Gareth felt the blood drain from his face. He glanced at the corner where Nyla stood. She was clutching the bag tight to her chest. You have 24 hours to surrender the biologicals and the asset, Kincaid said. If you do not, we will be forced to initiate a sanitization protocol. For the safety of the Hearthbelt, of course. The screen went black. The silence that followed was heavier than gravity. Gareth looked at Arden. She was not trembling. She was not crying. She looked like a general who had just seen the enemy army crest the hill. She is coming, Arden said. Let her come, Gareth said. He touched the bandage on his hand. This is my station, and I am not done fixing it. The silence of the Hearthbelt was usually a comfort to Gareth Hale. It was a thick, insulating blanket that kept the noise of the universe at bay. But the silence that settled over Latchkey Station in the days following Director Kincaid's transmission was different. It was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of a held breath before a scream. The blockade was not physical. It was digital and social. One by one, the icons of neighboring stations on the navigation map had turned from friendly green to neutral gray, and then to offline black. No trade ships hailed them. No automated buoys pinged them for weather data. Even the automated deep space courier drones were diverting their paths by thousands of kilometers to avoid Latchkey's sector. They had been quarantined, treated like a pathogen in the bloodstream of the system. Gareth stood at the main console, staring at the telemetry of the resonance loom. The machine was the only thing moving. Its violet core churned with a violence that made the deck plates vibrate. The alignment was approaching the once-in-a-decade synchronization of the star's magnetic field, and the loom was fighting to keep the Hearthbelt from tearing itself apart. You are thinking about running, a voice said. Gareth did not turn. He knew the sound of Arden's footsteps now. They were lighter than a human's, a soft pad that somehow carried weight. I am thinking about logistics, Gareth corrected, lying. You are thinking that if you load us into the shuttle and burn hard for the outer rim, we might make it before Kincaid's blockade closes, Arden said. She came to stand beside him. She was wearing a tool belt she had scavenged from the maintenance bay. It hung low on her hips. We would make it, Gareth admitted. The shuttle is fast. Kincaid's heavy cruisers are slow. But the loom, Gareth tapped the screen. The graph showed a red line, spiking dangerously high. It requires manual calibration every 4 hours now. If I leave, the dampeners will drift. When the alignment hits in 2 days, the resonance wave will be unchecked. It will not just be a power outage, Arden. It will shatter the gravity wells of the inner colonies. Thousands of people will die. Arden looked at the screen. She did not understand the math, but she understood the stakes. So we are tethered, she said. I am tethered, Gareth said. You are not. I can teach Nyla how to fly the shuttle. I can set the autopilot. And leave you here, Arden turned to him. Her amber eyes were fierce. To face a Dominion fleet with a wrench and a bad attitude, no. It is a strategic choice, Gareth argued, though his heart was not in it. Save the passengers. Sacrifice the crew. Andar. We are not passengers anymore, Arden said. We are crew. The door to the command deck hissed open. Mira marched in, followed by Nyla. Mira looked agitated, her tail twitching back and forth like a metronome set to a fast tempo. We need to talk about the beacon, Mira said without preamble. Gareth sighed. We have talked about the beacon. It is broken. It is ancient. And if we turn it on, it screams, "Here we are," to everyone with a receiver. They already know where we are. Mira threw her hands up. Kincaid knows, but the rest of the Hearthbelt does not. They just know we are blacklisted. They think we are criminals or plague carriers. Mira slammed her hand onto the console, startling Gareth. We turn on the beacon. We broadcast Kincaid's threat. We show them the children. We show them the glass egg. We make this public. The Dominion hates light, Gareth. They work in the dark. If we shine a light on them, they might hesitate. Oh. Or they might expedite the execution to silence the witness, Arden countered, her voice low. You are talking about baiting a trap with our own bodies, Mira. We are already in the trap, Mira snapped. The jaws are just closing slowly. I would rather shout than die quietly. It is too risky, Arden said. We keep our heads down, we fortify. We wait for a mistake. We are the mistake, Nyla shouted. The room went silent. The teenager was standing by the door, her fists clenched at her sides. She looked from Arden to Gareth, her expression a mix of fury and exhaustion that was too old for her face. Stop it, Nyla said, her voice shaking. Stop talking about tactics. Stop talking about bait. You adults always do this. You make wars, and then you use us as the excuse. For the children. To protect the family. It is garbage. She stepped forward, pointing a finger at Gareth. You want to be the hero who sacrifices himself. I see it in your face. It makes you feel noble. She turned to Arden. And you want to be the martyr who suffers in silence because you think suffering is the price of existence. Nyla wiped her nose aggressively with her sleeve. I am tired of hiding. I am tired of running. If we are going to die, I want to die screaming at them, not shivering in the dark. Gareth looked at the girl. He felt a sudden, sharp ache in his chest. He recognized that anger. He had felt it 20 years ago, standing in a recruitment office listening to old men talk about glory. I am scared, Gareth said. The admission hung in the air, heavy and unexpected. Nyla stopped mid-breath. Arden looked at him sharply. Gareth leaned back against the console, crossing his arms over his chest to hide the tremor in his hands. I am terrified, Gareth continued softly. I have survived because I stayed small, because I stayed quiet. Turning on that beacon goes against every survival instinct I have developed since the war. He looked at Nyla. But do you know what scares me more? It is the quiet. It is the memory of the times I saw something wrong and did nothing because I wanted to live. I have a lot of those memories. They are louder than the loom. He pushed off the console. He walked over to the main communications array, a dusty, oversized lever encased in a plastic guard. Mira is right, Gareth said. Silence is consent. If we let them wipe us out in the dark, we are helping them do it. Arden let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for days. She looked at Mira, then at Gareth. She nodded slowly. If we do this, Arden said, we do it properly. We do not just send a distress signal. We send a manifesto. I like the sound of that. Mira grinned, her teeth sharp. I will write the script. I am good with dramatic speeches. Wait, Gareth held up a hand. The beacon is not just a switch. The primary transmitter dish is on the outer hull. It is frozen solid. The mechanism is jammed. I have to go out there and manually align it before we can broadcast anything. I will go with you, Arden said immediately. It is EVA, Gareth said. Zero gravity, hard vacuum. I know how to wear a suit, Gareth, Arden said. And you need someone to hold the torch while you hammer the ice. Unless you have grown a third arm, I do not know about. The outer hull of Latchkey Station was a landscape of desolation. The starlight was harsh and unfiltered, casting long, razor-sharp shadows across the gray metal. Gareth and Arden floated in the void, magnetic tethers securing them to the station's skin. The silence here was absolute. The only sound was the hiss of Gareth's own breathing and the static crackle of the comms loop. "Watch your step," Gareth's voice said in Arden's ear. "The plating is brittle here." "I see it," Arden replied. Her breathing was steady, rhythmic. She was handling the void better than most rookies he had trained. They reached the beacon array. It was a massive dish encrusted with years of ice and cosmic dust. The alignment gears were frozen into a solid block of crystal. "It is worse than I thought," Gareth grumbled. "Pass me the thermal lance." Arden handed him the tool. Gareth ignited it, the blue flame, silent in the vacuum, cutting into the ice. Steam, sublimated, instantly vanishing into nothingness. They worked in tandem. Gareth cut, Arden cleared the debris. It was grueling work. The cold seeped through the layers of their suits, gnawing at their joints. "Hold this locking pin," Gareth said, straining against a rusted lever. Arden reached out. Her gloved hand brushed against his. Even through the thick layers of insulation, through the vacuum, through the terrifying emptiness of space, Gareth felt the contact. It was grounding. It was a reminder that there was life in the void. He looked at her through the gold-tinted visor of his helmet. He could only see her eyes, wide and focused, and the reflection of the stars on her glass. "You are good at this," Gareth said. It was a stupid thing to say. "I fix things," Arden said. "It is what mothers do. We fix toys. We fix clothes. We fix gears." "You are fixing me," Gareth said. The words slipped out before he could check them. He froze. He waited for her to laugh or to pull away. Arden did not move. Her hand stayed on the locking pin, her glove resting against his. "You were not broken, Gareth," she said, softly. "Just disassembled." The static in the comms loop hissed. It felt intimate, like a secret whispered in a crowded room. "Okay." Gareth cleared his throat, his face feeling hot despite the sub-zero environment. "That pin is loose. I am going to rotate the dish now." He turned away, focusing intently on a bolt that did not need focusing on. Smooth, a voice cut into the channel. Gareth nearly dropped the thermal lance. "Mira, get off the command channel. I am monitoring the telemetry." Mira's voice was full of mirth. "And also rating your survivability. Flirting in a vacuum that is a bold strategy. High risk, high reward. I give it a 7 out of 10. "We are not flirting," Gareth snapped. "I am just holding the pin," Arden said, though Gareth could hear the smile in her voice. "Right," Mira said. "Just holding the pin. And I am just a fox who accidentally fell into a spaceship. Carry on, lovebirds. The dish is at 80% alignment." Gareth groaned. He finished the rotation, the gears grinding silently in the void. "Done," he said. "Let's get inside. I can't feel my toes." Back inside the airlock, the atmosphere cycled back with a reassuring hiss. They stripped off the heavy EVA suits. Gareth's muscles ached, but it was a good ache, the kind that came from doing something tangible. He walked to the mess hall to get water. The glass egg was sitting on the table, surrounded by a complex array of sensors Nyla had rigged up. Gareth paused. He felt it again. It was not a sound exactly. It was a vibration in his teeth, a hum in the base of his skull. He looked at the egg. The cloudy interior was swirling, shifting like smoke in a bottle. He took a step closer. Suddenly, the mess hall vanished. Gareth was standing in a corridor he did not recognize. The walls were white, pristine, glowing with soft internal light. The air smelled of sterile ozone and peppermint. He looked down at his hands. They were not his hands. They were slender, smooth, holding a data pad made of transparent glass. "The harmonic variance is within tolerance, Director," a voice said. It was his voice, but it wasn't. It was lighter, younger, full of eager arrogance. "Push it further," a cold voice replied. We need to see the threshold of the mirror plane. Gareth looked up. He saw a man in a white coat turning away. On the back of the coat was a symbol, a double helix wrapped around a tuning fork. The station shuddered. A siren wailed a sound that was not a siren, but a scream of metal tearing. "Containment breach!" Gareth shouted. "The loom is singing back!" He reached for a lever. "Gareth!" The world snapped back. Gareth stumbled, catching himself on the edge of the mess hall table. Arden was gripping his arm. Nyla was staring at him with wide eyes. "You okay?" Arden asked. "You went pale. You looked like you were seeing a ghost." Gareth blinked, trying to shake the smell of peppermint from his nose. "I don't know. I saw—" He looked at the glass egg. It was pulsing rhythmically. "I saw a laboratory," Gareth whispered. "I saw the loom, but it was new. It was clean, and I knew how to calibrate it. I knew the codes." He rubbed his temples. "I have never been to a research facility. I was infantry. I fixed treads on tanks. I don't know quantum harmonics." "The egg," Nyla said. She pointed to the object. "When you got close, it got brighter." Gareth looked at the artifact. It is not just a key, he realized. It is a memory drive or a black box. And for some reason, it is leaking data into my head. "Why you?" Arden asked. "Because I have spent 5 years sleeping next to the loom," Gareth said. "Maybe my brain is tuned to the frequency. Or maybe I am just going crazy." "Crazy is useful," Mira said, walking in from the hallway. "But we have a bigger problem. We have visitors." Gareth's blood ran cold. "Dominion." "Not unless the Dominion started flying a garbage trucks," Mira said. "Come to the hangar." The ship in the hangar was, if possible, uglier than Captain Rook's freighter. It looked like a potato that had been wrapped in tin foil and kicked down a flight of stairs. But Gareth recognized it. It was the Rusty Spoon. The ramp lowered and a massive figure stomped down. Harper Dune, the owner of the nearest geothermal algae farm. He was a man shaped like a barrel with a beard that doubled as a scarf. Behind him trailed Juno Vale, a nomadic mechanic with blue hair and a belt full of illegal modification tools. "Hail!" Harper boomed, his voice echoing. "You are hard to reach. I tried calling, but your line is dead. So I thought maybe Gareth finally kicked the bucket and I can steal his good generator." "Nice to see you too, Harper," Gareth said, stepping forward. He didn't lower his guard. "Why are you here? The sector is quarantined." "Yeah, we heard," Juno said, popping a bubble of gum. She looked at the group of Vulpiri children peeking out from behind the crates. Kincaid put out a notice. Said Latchkey is a biohazard zone, which usually means someone is having a party the Dominion wasn't invited to. Juno grinned, spotting the children. "And looks like it is a full house." Harper looked at Arden, then at the kids. His gruff expression softened just a fraction. "We brought parts," Harper grunted. He kicked a crate down the ramp. "Couple of thermal couplers, some fresh biomass for your filters, and a case of real whiskey because I figured you would need it." "Why?" Gareth asked. "If they catch you here, you lose your farm license." "They revoked my license 3 days ago," Harper spat. "Said my algae strain was non-compliant. They are squeezing everyone, Gareth, not just you." "We are all the leftovers, Hale," Juno said, leaning against a strut. "The Dominion wants a perfect garden. They are weeding out the jagged edges. We are the jagged edges. We figured jagged edges should stick together." Arden stepped forward. "Thank you," she said. Harper looked at her, then shrugged, uncomfortable with gratitude. "Don't thank me yet, lady. I eat a lot. Hope you have food." The reunion was cut short by the proximity alarm. This time, it was not a friendly potato ship. "Contact!" Gareth yelled, sprinting for the command deck. "Multiple signatures, small fast. Drones." By the time he reached the screens, the tactical display was swarming with red dots. "Scout drones," Gareth confirmed. "Dominion Hunter-Seeker class. They are not here to destroy. They are here to paint targets for the bombardment ships. They are looking for the heat signatures, Arden said, reading the display over his shoulder. They are scanning for biological clusters. We have too many people, Gareth said. We light up like a bonfire. Distract them. Nyla's voice came over the intercom. She was in the hydroponics bay. Nyla, stay put, Gareth ordered. No, Nyla said. I have a plan. Tibbs Alara, get the emergency blankets. The shiny ones. Gareth watched the internal cameras in horror and fascination. The children were moving. They were running through the corridors, dragging sheets of reflective mylar insulation. They ran into the hydroponics bay where the air was thick with dry algae dust. Open the external vents in Sector 4, Nyla commanded. That will vent the atmosphere, Gareth shouted. Just for 10 seconds, Nyla yelled back. Do it. Trust me. Gareth looked at the screen. The drones were closing in on the command deck. He had no choice. Venting Sector 4, Gareth slammed the override. On the external cameras, a cloud of green dust exploded out of the station's side, carried by the escaping air. In the harsh starlight, the dust glittered. At the same moment, the children shined laser pointers toys they had found in the cargo through the viewports, reflecting them off the mylar sheets. The result was a chaotic disco ball effect in the vacuum. The algae dust sparkled, creating thousands of false heat blooms and light reflections. The drones programmed to lock onto thermal, and visual anomalies went haywire. They broke formation, swarming the cloud of dust, firing their scanning lasers at floating particles of dried seaweed. "Rich mosquitoes!" Tibbs's voice cheered over the comms. "Look at them. They are chasing the dust." "They are confused," Juno said, watching the sensors. "Their logic processors can't distinguish the decoys. That is actually brilliant." "It won't last long," Gareth said. "Once the dust settles, they will reacquire us. We need to hit the beacon, now." "I am ready," Mira said. She was at the broadcast console. She had a microphone in her hand. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. "The message is cued. This is Latchkey Station. We are alive. We are here. And we are not wrong." "Short, punchy," Gareth nodded. He looked at the loom. The graph was trembling. "Arden," Gareth said. "When we turn this on, the power draw is going to be massive. The loom might react." "Let it react," Arden said. She put her hand on his shoulder. "We are done hiding." Gareth took a deep breath. He looked at the red switch that controlled the beacon. He thought about his quiet life. He thought about the silence he had cherished. He realized he hated the silence. "Do it," Gareth said. He flipped the switch. The station groaned. The lights dimmed as the capacitors discharged. On the hull, the massive dish hummed to life. A pulse of pure radio energy, broad spectrum and unencrypted, blasted out into the hearth belt. It was a shout across the void. "We are here!" And then the loom answered. It was not a mechanical failure. It was a response. The violet core of the resonance loom flared white. A beam of energy shot out from the machine, not into space, but into the station. It hit the broadcast array. The signal didn't just go out to the neighbors. The loom amplified it. It folded the signal into the resonance wave of the star itself. "Gareth," Juno yelled. "Look at the readings. The signal is everywhere. It is using the space-time curvature to propagate. We are not just broadcasting to the hearth belt. We are broadcasting to the entire quadrant." Gareth stared at the screen. The message was rippling out at impossible speeds, carried by the loom's song. And in the mess hall, the glass egg shattered. Not from impact, from resonance. It exploded into dust, and from the dust, a holographic projection sprang up. It wasn't a map. It wasn't a weapon code. It was a DNA sequence, a twin helix, one half broken, one half whole. And a voice, the same voice from Gareth's vision, echoed through the station speakers, synchronized with the loom. Project Mirror complete. Subject viable. Separation successful. Gareth looked at Arden. She was staring at the hologram. Her face was a mask of shock. "That is," Arden whispered, "that is my genetic code." She looked at Mira. Mira was looking at the hologram too. Tears were streaming down her face. "And mine," Mira whispered. The loom hummed a deep, satisfied sound. It had found its missing piece. The beacon was lit, and the fire had illuminated something far more dangerous than a refugee family. It had illuminated the truth. "Kincaid isn't coming to arrest you," Gareth said, the horror dawning on him as the puzzle pieces slammed together. "She is coming to delete the experiment." He turned to the group. "Battle stations. Everyone. We have rung the bell. Now we have to survive the noise." The arrival of the Harmonist Dominion was not marked by sirens or explosions. It was marked by the eclipsing of the stars. The Virtue's Hand Director, Sable Kincaid's flagship, did not just enter the sector. It occupied it. It was a massive, pristine wedge of white cerametal, smooth and featureless, designed to look less like a warship and more like a floating monument to order. Flanking it were 6 support frigates moving in a perfect hexagonal formation. They drifted into the space around Latchkey Station, blocking out the nebula, blocking out the escape vectors, blocking out everything but the cold white judgment of the Dominion. Gareth Hale stood on the command deck watching the tactical display. The red dots of the enemy fleet surrounded the solitary blue dot of his station. It looked like a drop of ink about to be swallowed by a sheet of paper. "She brought a parade," Gareth muttered. "She brought a sledgehammer to crack a walnut," Juno Vale corrected, leaning over the console. She popped a bubble of gum, the sound sharp in the tense silence. "She really wants those kids, Hale." "She wants the silence," Gareth said. "The kids are just the noise she is trying to cancel." He keyed the internal comms. "All hands, this is Hale. They are here. You know the drill. This is not a military engagement. We are not soldiers. We are a nuisance. Our goal is not to win. Our goal is to be impossible to swallow. Stay sharp." Below decks, the station was a hive of frantic, organized chaos. It was the most pathetic, inspiring army Gareth had ever seen. Harper Dune had parked his rust-bucket freighter, the Rusty Spoon, across the main docking clamp, effectively jamming the port. He and 3 of his farmhands were currently welding makeshift armor, plating onto the hull plating that looked suspiciously like tractor siding. They were armed not with plasma rifles, but with high-pressure thermal sprayers used for killing algae parasites. "If they try to board," Harper had told Gareth, patting the tank on his back, "they are going to get a face full of superheated fungicide. It smells like rotten eggs and burns like guilt." Juno had deployed her swarm. It consisted of 20 repair drones usually used for welding hull seams. Now, they were equipped with strobe light speaker systems, wired to play feedback loops at max volume, and in one case a fire extinguisher taped to a chassis with duct tape. "It is psychological warfare," Juno explained. "Dominion troops are trained for tactical precision. They are not trained for a flying robot screaming static while spraying foam in their visors." And then there were the neighbors. Gareth had expected the sector to flee. He had expected the plague ship treatment to hold. But the beacon had changed things. The broadcast, the image of the double helix, the sound of the loom answering, had gone out to every scrapper miner and hermit in the hearth belt. They had not come to be heroes. They had come because they were nosy, because they were angry, and because the Dominion had squeezed them all dry. A dozen small ships, tug skiffs, customized racers were buzzing around the station like angry hornets. They formed a chaotic shifting shield. They refused to answer Dominion hails, clogging the airwaves with chatter about weather engine prices and bad recipes. It was a weaponized traffic jam. Inside the station, the children were the runners. Nyla stood in the junction of Sector 3. She wore a headset, that was too big for her one hand pressing it to her ear. "Tibbs, report," Nyla commanded. "Sector 4 is sealed," Tibbs's voice chirped. "I put the glue in the door tracks like you said. It won't open without a blowtorch." "Good," Nyla said. "Ilara, get the little ones to the safe room in the core. Do not stop for toys. Move." She looked up and saw Gareth watching her from the walkway above. For a second, the teenager's hard mask slipped, revealing the terrified child beneath. But then, she squared her shoulders, gave him a sharp nod, and turned back to her task. "Nyla," Gareth called down. She looked up. "Good work," Gareth said. "Don't get dead, Gareth," Nyla retorted. "I don't know the password to the master control." Gareth turned back to the command deck. Arden and Mira were waiting for him. Arden was checking the charge on a stun baton she had found. Mira was pacing, muttering lines under her breath, as if rehearsing for a play. "You do not have to be here for the call," Gareth said. "We are the call," Arden said. She holstered the baton. "She wants to see us. Let her see." The main screen lit up. The static cleared, revealing Director Sable Kincaid. She was not on a bridge. She was sitting in a room that looked like a comfortable study, complete with a bookshelf and a cup of tea. It was a calculated image of civility. "Mr. Hale," Kincaid smiled. It was a terrifyingly genuine smile. "I see you have gathered a colorful, welcoming committee." "We are a tight-knit community, Director," Gareth said, crossing his arms. "We don't like trespassers." "Trespassers?" Kincaid raised an eyebrow. "I am the governing authority of this sector, Gareth. I am here to ensure public safety." She took a sip of tea. "You are harboring biological variants that pose a catastrophic risk to the resonant stability of the Hearth Belt. Those creatures you are protecting, they are not refugees. They are living resonance forks. Their very existence disrupts the loom. They have names." Arden stepped into the frame. Her voice was cold, clear, and regal. "I am Arden. This is Mira. We are not variants. We are people." Kincaid looked at Arden. For a moment her mask of politeness flickered, replaced by a look of scientific distaste. "You are a duplication error," Kincaid said softly. "A redundancy. Nature abhors redundancy, my dear. It creates noise, and noise leads to chaos. We exist," Mira stepped up beside Arden. "We breathe, we think, and we are not going anywhere." Kincaid sighed, setting her cup down. "I was hoping for reason, but I see the infection has spread to your logic centers." She tapped a command on her desk. "I am not asking for your permission anymore, Mr. Hale. I am here to excise the tumor. If you will not hand them over, I will simply turn off the environment that sustains them." "You can't," Gareth said. "If you fire on the station, you risk hitting the loom. You won't risk the alignment." "I do not need to fire," Kincaid said. "I have the codes, Gareth. The Dominion built the loom. We can lock it." She looked directly at him. "Surrender the variants in the genetic data, or I will initiate a remote dampening protocol. I will stop the loom's heart. The resulting cold snap will kill everyone on that station in 20 minutes. The choice is yours." The screen did not go black. She left the channel open, watching them. "She is bluffing," Juno said, though her voice wavered. "She won't shut down the loom. It would destabilize the whole belt." "She thinks she can restart it," Gareth said, his stomach churning. "She thinks she controls it." Suddenly the station lurched. It was not a physical impact. It was a sickening sensation of vertigo, as if the floor had dropped away and then slammed back into place instantly. Gareth grabbed the console. "Report." "Resonance spike," Harper yelled over the comms. "Massive, the loom just hiccuped." "Look," Mira whispered, pointing at the table. On the command table, Gareth's coffee mug sat next to a wrench. But now there were 2 coffee mugs and 2 wrenches. They flickered. The duplicates were translucent, ghostly, occupying the same space but slightly offset. It hurt the eyes to look at them. The reality of the table was vibrating, unable to decide which version of the object was real. "What is that?" Nyla asked, her voice trembling. "Temporal echo," Gareth said, horror washing over him. "The loom regulates time and space in this sector. Kincaid is messing with the dampeners. She is causing local causality to fray." "It is the mirror bloom," Arden said. "She is triggering the very thing she claims to fight." "See," Kincaid's voice came from the screen. "The instability is growing. It is the presence of the variants causing this. Hand them over and I will stabilize the field." "Liar!" Gareth shouted at the screen. "You are doing this." Outside, the panic was spreading. "Hale." It was one of the neighbor ships, a miner named Stig. "My controls. I have 2 steering columns. I can't touch either of them." My hand goes through one. "We are pulling out." "Do not run," Gareth yelled. "If you move while the field is unstable, you might tear your ship in half." "We can't stay here," Stig screamed. "This is ghost stuff, Hale. I didn't sign up for ghosts." The flotilla began to break formation. The ordinary solidarity was cracking under the pressure of the impossible. "They are leaving," Juno said. "Gareth, if they leave, the Dominion drones will swarm us." Gareth looked at the tactical map. The friendly dots were turning away. Kincaid was winning, not with guns, but with fear. "Juno," Gareth said. "If I die today, you can have the station." Juno looked at him, surprised by the sudden shift in tone. "What? You said you wanted it for a bed and breakfast," Gareth said. "It is yours. But right now, I need you to keep those drones off my back for 5 minutes." "What are you going to do?" Juno asked. "Throw a wrench at the flagship." "I am going to leave you the loom," Gareth said grimly. "And it hates me. Remember, I am going to make sure it hates Kincaid more." He turned to Mira. "The beacon. Is it still transmitting?" "Yes," Mira said. "But the signal is garbled by the interference." "Boost it," Gareth ordered. "Bypass the safeties. Route the main reactor power directly into the transmitter." "That will melt the dish," Mira protested. "I do not care if it melts into a puddle," Gareth said. "I need 1 clear minute. Put me on. Everywhere. I want every ship, every station, and every Dominion monitor to see this." Mira's hands flew over the controls. "Ready. You live in 3, 2, 1. Gareth stepped in front of the camera. He did not look like a commander. He looked like a tired mechanic in a dirty jumpsuit with a bandage on his hand and fear in his eyes. "This is Gareth Hale of Latchkey Station," he said. His voice shook, then steadied. "Director Kincaid tells you we are the danger. She tells you that these people, my family, are a virus." He grabbed the duplicating wrench. He held it up. The ghost image flickered, buzzing like an insect. "Look at this," Gareth shouted. "This isn't us. This is her. The Dominion is squeezing the loom to make us surrender. They are breaking the timeline to maintain order." He looked directly into the lens. "To the ships pulling away. If the loom falls, there is no away. The mirror bloom will not stop at the station. It will wash over your farms, your homes. You will watch your children turn into ghosts in their own beds." He paused. "We are not leaving. We are standing on the crack in the world to hold it shut. If you want to live, do not run. Hold the line." On the screen, Kincaid's face remained impassive, but her eyes narrowed. She had not expected a lecture on physics. She had not expected him to weaponize the truth. "Cut his feed," Kincaid ordered someone off screen. "You can't cut the signal," Gareth said. "The loom is singing it. You can't silence gravity." Outside, the rusty spoon fired its thrusters. Harper's voice boomed over the channel. "He is right. I am not getting turned into a ghost by some bureaucrat. Stig, turn your bucket around, or I will ram you myself." The fleeing ships hesitated. Then slowly, one by one, they turned back. The wall of junk ships reformed tighter this time. They are holding, Juno whispered. I don't believe it. Director, a voice on Kincaid's bridge spoke audible over the open channel. Civilian unrest is spiking in the outer sectors. They are seeing the broadcast. We have reports of strikes in the mining colonies. Kincaid's face tightened. She looked at Gareth with pure, cold hatred. Very well, Kincaid said. If you want to be a martyr, Mr. Hale, I will oblige you. Initiate the dampening pulse. Full intensity. Freeze them out. Director! The stress on the loom. Her aide protested. Do it, Kincaid snapped. The Virtue's hand fired a beam of concentrated energy at the loom. It wasn't an attack. It was a shackle. A massive magnetic clamp designed to seize the machine's rotation. The loom screamed. It was a sound that was not heard but felt, a psychic shriek that brought everyone on the station to their knees. Gravity failed, then doubled, then reversed. In the mess hall, the air shimmered. Get down! Arden screamed. She dove toward the children. Tibbs was standing near the viewport, mesmerized by the violet lightning arcing through the room. The air around Tibbs rippled. A mirror bloom was forming a fracture in reality, where the reflection tries to replace the object. Tibbs' reflection in the glass stepped out. It reached for him. No! Arden launched herself across the room. She tackled Tibbs, shoving him out of the distortion zone. But her own leg dragged through the ripple. Arden cried out a sound of pure agony. She landed on the deck, clutching Tibbs to her chest. Mom! Nyla screamed, scrambling toward them. The gravity stabilized as the station's emergency inertial dampers kicked in. Gareth ran to Arden. Arden, are you hit? Arden looked up. She was pale, her teeth gritted. She looked at her left leg. It was flickering. Her boot, her pant leg, her flesh, they were phasing in and out of existence. Transparent 1 second, solid the next. It looked like a bad video signal. I am unstable, Arden gasped. The pain was clearly excruciating, a constant tearing of her atoms. We need a stasis field, Mira yelled, dropping to her knees beside her sister. Mira's face was wet with tears. The witty, sarcastic mask was gone. She looked terrified. Gareth, she is desynchronizing. If we don't anchor her, she will fade. The loom, Gareth said, looking at the main screen. The machine was thrashing against the Dominion's magnetic clamp. The violet light was turning a sickly, unstable green. Kincaid is choking it. The alignment is starting in 10 minutes. If the loom is locked, when the star aligns, the backlash will wipe out everything in this system. Arden is just the first. We will all flicker out. We have to surrender, Nyla sobbed, looking at her mother's phasing leg. Give them the data, save her. It won't work, Gareth said. His voice was dead calm. He had entered the zone, the place beyond fear where soldiers go when there are no good options left. Kincaid doesn't want the data anymore. She wants to bury the mistake. Even if we surrender, she will let the station freeze to cover her tracks. He looked at Arden. She was holding Tibbs's hand, trying to smile, to keep the boy from screaming. There is one way, Gareth said. Everyone looked at him. The magnetic clamp is external, Gareth said. But the loom's control core is internal. It is shielded. If we can get to the core, we can initiate a manual override. We can force the loom to synchronize with the star from the inside out. The energy surge would blow Kincaid's clamp off and reset the local space-time. The core, Juno's voice crackled over the comms. Gareth, the core is a reactor. The radiation, the gravity shear, it is suicide. It is a maintenance shaft, Gareth said. I have the schematics. It is designed for human access. Barely. I am going, Mira said, standing up. I can fit in the crawl spaces. You need me to operate the interface, Gareth said. And we need someone to hold the physical breakers open while we type the code. I will go, Nyla said. No, Gareth and Arden said simultaneously. Yes, Nyla shouted. I am small. I am fast. And I am not staying here to watch my mother fade away." Gareth looked at the teenager. He saw the steel in her spine. He saw the same look Arden had. "Fine," Gareth said. "But we need 3. 4, Arden whispered. She pulled herself up, using the table for support. Her leg flickered violently, but she put weight on it. She winced, but she stood. "I am coming," Arden said. "You can't walk," Gareth said. "Then carry me," Arden said. "I am a part of this code, Gareth. The glass egg, the data. It is me. It is us. The loom knows us. If anyone can talk to it, it is the twins." Gareth looked at the group. A mechanic, 2 fox mothers, one phasing out of reality, and a teenage alien girl. They were about to walk into the heart of a machine that controlled the fabric of the universe, while a fleet of warships tried to crush them. "Juno," Gareth said into the comms. "We are going dark. Keep them busy. Harper, don't let them dock." "Give 'em hell, Hale," Harper grunted. "We will be here when you get back. Or, well, we will be ghosts together." Gareth grabbed his toolkit. He looked at the heavy blast door that led to the loom's access tunnel. It vibrated with the roar of the machine. It felt like standing in front of the mouth of a dragon. "Come with me," Gareth said, echoing the words he had spoken in the hangar. But this time he didn't have to ask. Mira grabbed one side of Arden. Gareth grabbed the other. Nyla took the lead, holding the flashlight. They stepped into the airlock. The door sealed behind them with a heavy thud, cutting off the noise of the command deck. Ahead of them, the tunnel stretched out, bathed in the blinding, rhythmic pulsing of the loom. It was hot. It was loud. And it was the only way home. "Let's go fix the world," Gareth said. They walked into the light. The descent into the core of the resonance loom was not a walk through a corridor. It was a walk into the throat of a living thing. The service tunnel ended abruptly, opening into a vast spherical chamber that defied the cramped industrial logic of Latchkey Station. This was the cathedral of the machine. The walls were not made of metal plates, but of interwoven lattice struts that hummed with a frequency so low it vibrated in the fluid of the inner ear. In the center of the chamber, suspended by magnetic fields and sheer force of will, was the heart. It was a singularity of light, a spinning chaotic knot of violet and white energy that looked like a star trying to be born and die at the same time. The air here smelled of ozone, and petrichor, the scent of rain on dry earth, which was impossible in the vacuum-sealed environment of a space station. Gareth shielded his eyes against the glare. The light did not just illuminate. It penetrated. It passed through the skin, warming the blood. With every pulse of the heart, Gareth felt a wash of sensation that was not his own. He tasted copper. He felt the phantom sensation of a child's hand gripping his finger. He felt a terror that belonged to someone running through snow. "Keep moving," Gareth shouted over the roar, though the sound was not acoustic. It was in their heads. "Do not look at the light directly. It triggers the memory centers." Nyla was in the lead, clutching the heavy industrial flashlight with both hands. Her knuckles were white. The beam of the flashlight cut through the haze, a thin, yellow line against the overwhelming violet. She stumbled, and for a second Gareth saw her freeze. "Nyla!" Gareth barked. The girl shook her head violently, scattering whatever vision the machine had forced into her mind. "I am okay," she yelled back. "I am okay. It is just loud. It is so loud." Behind her, Mira and Gareth were practically carrying Arden. Arden's condition had worsened. Her left leg was no longer just flickering. It was absent for seconds at a time, replaced by a jittering cloud of static. When she stepped, she groaned the pain of molecular displacement, tearing at her nervous system. "Almost there," Mira gasped, her arm wrapped around Arden's waist. Mira's face was wet with tears, her usual sharp grin replaced by a grimace of desperate effort. "Stay solid, Arden. Do not let go." "I am here," Arden whispered. "Here." Her voice sounded like it was coming from a bad radio connection, tinny and distant. "I am trying." They reached the control interface. It was a platform of obsidian glass extending out over the abyss, directly facing the spinning heart. There were no keyboards. There were no levers. There was only a series of resonance plates, large concave dishes designed to accept harmonic input. Gareth laid Arden down gently on the platform. She shimmered, her form blurring, as if the universe was struggling to remember her shape. "Gareth," Arden grabbed his wrist. Her hand felt cold, then hot, then insubstantial. If I go take them. The children, take them far away." Gareth looked down at her. The light from the loom washed over his scarred face. He felt the old fear rising, the fear of the officer who has to write the letters home, the fear of the man who survives when better people die. He knelt. He did not offer false hope. He did not say, "You will be fine." That was a lie for children, and Arden was not a child. "I am not taking them anywhere without you," Gareth said. His voice was rough, scraping against the silence of his own heart. "We fix this. We fix the machine. And we walk out. That is the job." Arden looked at him. The ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Work to do," she whispered. "Work to do," Gareth confirmed. He stood up and turned to the console. Nyla aimed the light at the manual breakers. "Mira, I need you on the secondary harmonic plate. You have to match the frequency of the spin. Can you do it?" Mira wiped her face with her sleeve. She looked at the spinning chaos of the heart. "It is singing," she said, her voice trembling. "Gareth, can you hear it? It is singing in two voices." "Just focus on the rhythm," Gareth commanded. He placed his hands on the primary plate. The metal was freezing. "Director Kincaid has initiated the dampening field," Gareth said, watching the readouts projected in the air. "The loom is fighting a chokehold. We have to break the grip." Suddenly, the air above the abyss shimmered. The violet light coalesced, twisting and folding, until it formed a colossal face. It was Sable Kincaid. She was projecting herself through the Dominion's control channel, her image 10 meters tall, looming over them like a deity. Her eyes were voids of static, but her voice was clear, amplified by the station's very walls. "Stop!" Kincaid boomed. "You are tampering with forces you do not comprehend, Sergeant Hale." Gareth did not look up. He kept his hands on the plate, feeling the vibrations. "I comprehend enough, Director. I know you are trying to suffocate a star to hide a mistake." "It is not a mistake," Kincaid said. "It is a correction. Look at her, Gareth." A beam of light spotlighted Arden on the floor. She convulsed her body, phasing wildly. "She is unraveling," Kincaid said, her voice sounding almost sympathetic. "The mirror bloom is a corruption of reality. It splits the singular into the plural. It creates echoes where there should be silence. That woman is not a person. She is a glitch." And the other one, the giant gaze, shifted to Mira. "The other one is just the rest of the error code." "Shut up!" Nyla screamed. She aimed a flashlight at the giant face, a pathetic beam of yellow against the hologram. "They are my mothers." "They are a biological impossibility," Kincaid stated coldly. "Surrender the asset, the glass egg data, and step away from the console. I can remerge them. I can fix the split. They will cease to be two broken halves and become one whole functional entity. It is the only way to save her life." Mira froze. She looked at Arden writhing in pain on the floor. Then she looked up at the giant face of Kincaid. "Merge," Mira whispered. "Reintegration," Kincaid promised. "The pain will stop. The confusion will stop. You will be whole again." "Don't listen to her," Gareth shouted. "She wants to wipe the slate clean. She doesn't care about saving them. She cares about removing the evidence." "Is it evidence to want to be whole?" Kincaid asked smoothly. Gareth, look at your own history. You are a man broken by war. If I offered to take away your memories to merge the soldier and the civilian into a seamless piece, would you not take it? Gareth's hands tightened on the plate. The question hit him like a physical blow. To forget the mud, to forget the screams, to be whole. He looked at the spinning heart. The loom was the engine of the hearth belt. It kept time. It kept rhythm. It kept things separate so they could exist. No, Gareth said softly. He looked up at the giant hologram. No, Gareth said louder. I am my scars, Kincaid. If you take them away, I am just a blank slate, and I am not fighting for a blank slate. He turned to Mira. Mira, don't listen to the sales pitch. Listen to the loom. Mira was shaking. She had stepped away from the console. She was staring at Arden. I have always felt it, Mira whispered. The empty space. The missing piece. She looked at Gareth, her eyes wide with a terrifying realization. She is right, Gareth. I am not real. I am just the echo. And then the loom peaked. The alignment struck. The star outside aligned perfectly with the station's orbit. The magnetic field slammed into the loom. The dampening field Kincaid had applied buckled. The room shattered. It did not break physically. It broke visually. Suddenly, Gareth was not standing on the platform. He was standing in a snowfield. He saw a woman running. She was alone. She was pregnant, terrified, clutching a bundle of blankets. She was running from a burning facility, a Dominion lab. She was Arden, and she was Mira. She was one woman. She reached the edge of the mirror bloom, a naturally occurring rift in the sector, a place where the loom's influence was weak. The pursuers were close. The dogs were barking. She had no escape. She turned to the rift. She prayed, not to a god but to the universe. Help me. I cannot do this alone. I am not strong enough. She stepped into the bloom. The light fractured. The pain was absolute. The universe looked at her and said, you need to be stronger. You need to be faster. Very well. The woman screamed as she was torn apart. But she did not die. Two women stumbled out of the rift on the other side. One was tall, regal, carrying the weight of the memory, the pain of the past, the fierce, protective instinct of the mother. That was Arden. The other was quick, sharp, carrying the survival instinct, the humor to deflect the horror, the ability to laugh when the world ended. That was Mira. And the glass egg, it wasn't data. It was the crystallized residue of their soul, the energy that had been shed during the split. The vision snapped. Gareth gasped, falling to his knees on the obsidian platform. The reality of the core rushed back. He looked at them. Really looked at them. They were not sisters. They were not friends. They were the same person refracted through a prism of desperate survival. Project Mirror, Kincaid's voice, thundered triumphant. The ultimate dissociation. Now you see Gareth. They are a mistake. Let me correct it. The loom began to spin in reverse. The gravity in the chamber shifted. Arden and Mira were being pulled toward each other, dragged by an invisible magnetic force. Arden's phasing body slid across the floor. Mira's boots skidded. No, Neela screamed. She dropped the flashlight and grabbed Arden's arm. Stop it. It is inevitable, Kincaid said. Rejoin, B1. Be normal. Mira was being pulled closer to Arden. Their hands were inches apart. If they touched now under the influence of the loom's reversion field, they would fuse. The energy release would stabilize the station, but it would erase the two women Gareth knew. Mira looked at Arden. Arden looked at Mira. In that look, 1,000 conversations passed. You remember the pain, Mira thought. You remember how to run, Arden thought. I am the fear, Arden thought. I am the joke that hides it, Mira thought. They were two halves of a whole. Kincaid was right. But then Arden spoke. Her voice was weak, but it cut through the roar of the machine like a diamond. We, Arden gasped. We promised. Mira froze. She looked at the children, or rather the memory of the children waiting upstairs. 9 lives, 9 chaos engines. 9 kids, Mira whispered. One mom can't handle 9 kids. It is a logistical impossibility. Mira looked at Kincaid's giant face. She bared her teeth-sharp vulpary teeth. "Hey, lady," Mira shouted. Kincaid paused. "I like being me," Mira yelled. "I like my bad jokes. I like that I am the one who steals the extra ration bars. And I like her," she pointed at Arden. "She is the one who makes us brush our teeth if we merge. Who is going to be the fun one?" "You are choosing chaos," Kincaid sneered. "You are choosing to remain broken." "We are not broken," Arden shouted, surging up on her elbows. Her phasing stopped for a second, held in place by sheer anger. "We are not broken. We are multiplied." Arden reached out, but she did not grab Mira to merge. She grabbed Mira's hand and held it. "We are two," Arden declared. "We are distinct. We choose to stay." "Then you will die," Kincaid said. "The loom cannot sustain a paradox." She cranked the dampening field to 100%. The heart turned black. The station began to shake apart. The bolts in the lattice wall screamed as they sheared. "Gareth!" Nyla screamed. "Do something!" Gareth stood up. He looked at the black sun in the center of the room. He looked at Kincaid's smug, orderly face. He looked at the 2 women holding hands, refusing to be erased. He realized then what the loom needed. It didn't need a code. It didn't need a dampener. It needed a bridge. It needed a human element to ground the paradox. "Kincaid thinks the loom is a calculator," Gareth muttered. "She thinks 1 + 1 must equal 2. But this is resonance. In resonance, 1 + 1 can equal a louder 1. He ran to the primary interface. He didn't try to type a command. He didn't try to fight the machine's logic. He grabbed the 2 manual conducting rods, heavy brass handles, meant for emergency grounding. "Grab on!" Gareth roared to the group. "What?" Mira yelled. "The circuit is incomplete," Gareth shouted. "The loom is trying to resolve the split by erasing you. We have to force it to accept the new variable. We have to tell it that 2 is the correct answer." "How?" Arden cried. "By connecting everything." Gareth grabbed Arden's free hand. "Nyla, grab Mira. Make the chain. We are the circuit." Nyla didn't hesitate. She grabbed Mira's shoulder. Mira held Arden's hand. Arden held Gareth's hand. And Gareth held the conducting rods connected directly to the dying heart of the loom. "This is going to hurt," Gareth warned. He slammed the rods into the active slots. Crack. It wasn't electricity. It was pure existence. Gareth felt his soul being pulled through a straw. He felt the fire of the star. But more than that, he felt them. He felt Arden's sorrow, deep and oceanic, the weight of a mother who had run until her feet bled. He felt Mira's frantic, manic joy, the shield she used to keep the darkness out. He felt Nyla's fierce, protective rage, the teenager who had grown up too fast. And he felt himself, the soldier who wanted to be left alone. The man who had said, "I do." The loom felt them too. It looked at the paradox, 1 soul. 2 bodies. Kincaid's algorithm said error, delete. But the group's connection said family, valid. Gareth poured every ounce of his stubbornness into the machine. "Accept it," he commanded the metal god. "They are not a mistake. They are an evolution. Rewrite the damn code." The heart of the loom stopped spinning. For 1 second, there was absolute silence. Then it spun the other way. The blackness exploded into gold. A wave of golden light, not violet, not cold, but warm, living gold erupted from the core. It slammed into Kincaid's hologram. The projection shattered like glass. "Impossible," Kincaid's voice glitched. "The variance, it is beautiful." The signal cut. The golden wave rushed up the tunnel. It rushed through the station. It rushed out into the void. On the hull, the dampening clamp blew off with a force that rocked the Virtue's hand 3 kilometers away. The beacon caught the golden surge. It didn't just broadcast a message, it broadcast the feeling. Across the hearth belt, everyone watching their screens didn't just see a video. They felt for a microsecond the intense, defiant love of a family that refused to be unmade. They felt the truth, that being broken and put back together differently was not a sin. It was strength. In the core, the light faded to a gentle, rhythmic pulse. The air was warm. Gareth fell back against the console, gasping for air. His heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He looked at his hands. They were smoking slightly, the rubber of his gloves melted. He looked at the floor. Arden was there. Solid. Real. Her leg was flesh and bone, no longer flickering. Mira was there. Solid. She was panting, her hair a mess, her tail fluffed to 3 times its normal size. They were still 2. Arden sat up slowly. She looked at her hands. She touched her face. Then she reached out and touched Mira's face. "You are still ugly," Arden whispered, tears streaming down her face. "And you are still bossy," Mira sobbed, laughing. They hugged, a collision of fur and relief. Nyla dove onto them, burying her face in the space between them. Gareth watched them. He felt a pain in his chest, but it wasn't the angina of stress. It was the feeling of the ice melting. "Did we win?" Nyla asked, her voice muffled by Arden's coat. Gareth looked at the readouts. The loom was stable. The Dominion fleet was retreating, their sensors blinded, their flagship damaged by the feedback loop, and their narrative completely destroyed by the broadcast. "Yeah," Gareth rasped. "We won." Epilogue, the open door, 3 weeks later. The snow light of the nebula was still cold, but the interior of Latchkey Station was not. The mess hall had changed. The sterile metal tables were covered in colorful cloths, scraps of fabric Arden had woven. The smell of ozone was gone, replaced by the smell of baking bread, an experiment of Harper's that was surprisingly edible, and the sharp tang of hydraulic fluid. Gareth sat at the head of the table. He was polishing a new set of handrails he had fabricated. "Director Kincaid has resigned," Juno said, reading from a datapad. She was lounging on the counter eating a ration bar, citing health reasons, which I assume means publicly humiliated by a mechanic and a bunch of kids. "The Dominion isn't gone," Arden said. She was ladling soup into bowls. She moved with a slight limp, a permanent reminder of the core, but she moved with authority. "They will be back. They always come back." "Let them come," Nyla said. She was sitting with the younger kids, showing them how to tie a knot. "We have the beacon now. And we have friends." It was true. The blockade had broken. Ships were docked 3 deep at the pylons. Latchkey Station had become a pilgrimage site for the variants, the glitches, the people who didn't fit Kincaid's perfect geometry. They came for repairs. They came for fuel. They came to see the 2 mothers. Mira walked in carrying a crate of fresh fruit that had just arrived from a smuggler runner. She looked tired but happy. She dropped the crate on the table. "An apple," Tibbs shouted. "A real apple." "Don't eat the core," Mira warned. "It is poisonous. Or maybe that is just a lie I tell you to make you careful." "Who knows?" She winked at Gareth. Gareth stood up. He walked over to the viewport. The resonance loom was spinning outside its rhythm, steady, its song harmonious. It wasn't angry anymore. It was just working. He felt a presence beside him. "Arden." "You are thinking about the quiet again," she said. "No," Gareth said. He looked at the reflection in the glass. He saw himself. He saw Arden. He saw the chaotic, noisy, messy room behind them. "I was thinking," Gareth said, "that we need to expand the dorms. If we are going to be a sanctuary, we need more beds." Arden smiled. It was a true smile, reaching her amber eyes. "We can do that," she said. "We have plenty of hands." "And plenty of trouble," Gareth added. "That too." "Mr. Hale," Tibbs yelled from the table. "Pip is trying to eat the wrench again," Gareth sighed. He turned away from the window, away from the empty stars, and walked back into the warmth. Pip! Gareth shouted his voice, practicing the tone of a father, not a commander. Put the wrench down. That is high-grade tritanium. It will give you indigestion. No, Pip shouted back. I do, Gareth whispered to himself, a smile cracking his beard. I really do. He walked into the fray, ready for the next shift.